Hi, it's Romania Black, and you know what sucks? This episode's only 20 minutes long. I'm already irritated. It's not long enough. And so, it's been a little hot second since I've seen episode 10. I recorded episode 9 and 10 like back to back, took a good solid week off, and I'm still a little bit early, but I want to know what's up with this priest girl that's jumped into the sinner's pit. Need to know, because she's not the same one as the other two ladies. So we're getting all sorts of things going on. Is Zhao dead? We don't know. Did Hua Cheng kill him? The cat's out of the bag. We know Hua Cheng's here. He's with Lian. The one general guy's been fighting with them. Things are going down. We know that Feng's probably off fighting the two ladies. We don't know where Yao is. Everything's going crazy, and this episode's only 20 minutes long. Yeah, I know why y'all binge now. I get it. So, I have looked at the comments today. Episode 8 came out on YouTube today. I have looked at those comments. I have not touched episode 9 comments on Patreon yet because I know that there's a lot and it's going to take a while to get through. That's all right. I'll save them for episode 12. I got plenty of comments right now to talk about from the last couple episodes. So we're going to hit those before we start this episode. So this intro may be a little bit longer than usual, but y'all are used to that now, right? What can we do? So Kathy Chang talked about how Lian had only known Feng and Yao since episode 1, and I kind of forget about that. I do. They act as if they've known each other for a long time, even though they've just known each other for a very short span of time. And I question maybe it was the fact because Feng and Yao work for their deputy gods for the gods that were once working for Lian, that kind of like has passed on, like, you know, in a way. I'm sure it hasn't, but their impressions of Lian, I think that they're getting a very different impression perhaps than what they thought when they signed up to be his bodyguards or his deputy gods essentially. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. I'm like, man, they really have only known each other since episode 1, but they seem like they've been besties forever. Fun times. Or they act like that when Lian's around San Long because they're like, we don't trust this guy. Blackwind noted that Lian, I didn't want to, I'm trying to avoid spoilers like the plague because I want to read the novel and be surprised by the lore that comes out in the novel. But Blackwind did say, all they said was that Lian has only lived one life. Like, they ascended and then they got demoted and they were just stuck down on Earth until they ascended again. So that opens up a big can of worms that I don't want answered. I don't want hints about. None of that. I won't read it. If you try to spoil me, I'm not going to read it. So, but that does open up a big can of worms because I'm like, oh, so he's just been wandering around waiting to possibly ascend again? That kind of sucks. Because if you get demoted from the heavenly realm and you're just stuck in the mortal realm and you're just immortal essentially, okay, I could see why, you know, demoted gods could easily become ghosts or, you know, these demons, these catastrophes, because they've been stuck outside the heavenly realm, and so they just, if they can't get back up there, there's only one other direction to go, right? Or you just wander aimlessly around the mortal realm. So I wonder if that has anything to do with the ghosts. Don't know. I guess we'll find out. But I thought that was really cool, Blackwind, that you pointed that out, so thank you. Kiskity Crane noted that San Long only has three modes. Gege, notice me. Oh God, Gege, notice me. And then, which includes gay panic. And then savagely and witty sarcastic comments to everyone but Lian. So it's either like, notice me senpai, notice me Gege, or it's like, oh my God, you notice me, huh? Or it's like sarcastic witty comments. Yep, those are his only 3 modes. Everybody's been likening him to a cat that either wants to cozy up to Lian and no one else. Everybody else he hisses and bites at. And I'm like, no, that's pretty apt description. So yeah, also I liked Kiskity Crane's description of San Long as like a cat that brings dead offerings to Lian and hisses at everybody else. I'm like, that's really cute. I like it a lot. SQQLBH 1314 noted that Trian Shang means natural born, meaning that he's genuine and optimistic. And then, which makes sense with his character, the little kid. I like that. And then during the snake bite moment, when San Long was sucking on Lian's wrist, SQQ noted that he spat out blood twice, but he sucked the blood 3 times. And I was like, ooh, kinky. So he didn't spit out the blood the 3rd time. You know, if he was Hua Cheng and was a ghost, probably wouldn't have affected him. I'm like, I love it. It's great. Should have been a red flag, right? But we figured it out by now, so we're fine. Sarah Linda noted that it is not odd for the Banyu, the Half Moon Pass Preceptor, and the Yongin, the Central Plains Preceptor, to know each other if they are ghosts, but it is odd that they are working together after being on opposing sides. And I was like, yeah, that does seem kind of weird that they've been on opposing sides, but they're working together. And the one kind of noted that was like, hey, you know, you're not getting your friends to help. What's up with that? But now we know that the Half Moon Pass Preceptor is not the other one, so that opens up another can of worms, like what's going on. And then Lian collecting scraps all this time. What does he know and not know? So yeah, if Black Wind's words are right, and he's been on this plane, in the mortal realm for all this time collecting scraps, what has he learned and what is he not letting everyone else know that he knows? Because that's the thing, he seems like he doesn't obviously know what's happened in the heavenly realm all this time, and if he's been wandering around the mortal realm without any powers, then yeah, he wouldn't know everything that's been going on like the heavenly realm would. But what does he know? So I don't want spoilers. I don't want anybody telling me. I'm going to read it in the novel. But that is interesting to note. Like, he clearly knows more than perhaps he's letting on. Our cinnamon bun is a little bit maybe more street savvy than he seems, right? Anime Annie commented, the idea of gods competing to have territory for temples to have power is interesting, which I agree. And San Long often positions himself in reverence and below Lian, which I'm thinking he was once the boy with the bandages who practically worshipped Lian, and then he became this all-powerful ghost who still worships Lian, so there we go. And so, to go along with that, even though he's a powerful ghost, he puts Lian on a pedestal, and I'm like, yes, he is absolutely in love with Lian and adores him, despite the fact that he's extremely powerful. So, another thing Anime Annie brought up was that the communication array was blocked for everyone. And I was like, yeah, it was. That's weird. That's very odd that the communication array was blocked for everybody, which makes me think that, one, who did it? Was it Zhao? Was it somebody else? But two, it also makes me think that Yao went back to the heavenly realm to try to figure things out, to be like, why didn't the communication array work? What's up? What's the deal? And that's where he is now. We don't know. I think he's either helping Fong or he's gone off to get the gods to come back down and help take care of business. We shall see. And then finally, Four Sunsets talked about Yao, Jing, Guai, and Guai, which are animals, plants, and inanimate objects that apparently can cultivate in Chinese mythology. And I was like, oh, okay. And that by doing it, either they do it the right way and cultivate naturally, however that works, or they eat humans to gain power. They could be used as servants, as guardians, or they could take strength from things like the moon, which I think is crazy. So that kind of explains the man, the face that was in the ground that said he was human. It's like, was he actually human? We see the skeleton stuff, or had he kind of become one of these things as well over time? And the fact that these other instruments can gain, so I guess like the sword and stuff gaining, cultivating powers would kind of be, they'd be Guai, right? Guai, right? So that seems to be the case. So that's interesting. And then also Four Sunsets said that whole slashed by crazy soldiers line is actually not a correct translation. That the correct translation is trampled on by both sides who were blinded by bloodlust. That translation's so much better. And it makes so much more sense that the general in the cave that they were telling the story about, he tried to stop both sides from fighting, and in the end, he couldn't stop them and was trampled by both sides because the two sides were just so bloodthirsty to kill each other. They basically killed the one man trying to negotiate peace. And Lian seems to relate a lot to that story. Don't want any spoilers. I'm just saying it's very, very interesting. So yeah, I've talked for nearly 10 minutes, half the length of this episode. I'm not bitter, as you can tell. So let's do this. Let's start Modao Sushi. Let's start Modao Sushi. Oh, can you tell? It's been a Monday. It's been a Monday already. Let's start Heaven Official's Blessing, episode 11, and figure out what all we're gonna do. I want to learn things. I want more Hua Cheng, Lian goodness. So hopefully we get it. And we're going to start this here in 3, 2, 1. Let's do this, y'all. It wasn't long enough. I'm not immediately going to watch episode 12 because it's going to be the last episode before the OVA. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to wait till I answer the comments for episode 9 on Patreon before I do. Oh, how could you do that? How? I feel like I'm so glad I'm going to be reading the novel after this so I can see these conversations expanded upon and get more into them. I'm so glad because I'm like, are you joking? Are you joking? Yeah, we're going to talk about this episode. I had to bring Whiteboard Coon out because I was like, yep, we need to talk about it. We need to talk about it and break down some things. This show has the amazing ability to answer maybe 2 of your questions and then replace it with a dozen more. And it's like, well, you didn't think about this, but now you should. And it's like, So I am going to be honest. I am a little bit bummed because someone tried to spoil the general thing about Lian. Someone on YouTube tried to spoil it. So when we get to it, I'll talk about it, but I'm probably going to be really super hyper cautious now and really not get too into comments unless they seem like they're spoiler free, because I was nearly spoiled on that, and I'm like, they were trying to spoil it because they didn't think I'd get it. And I'm like, wow, okay. So yeah, probably going to be really super cautious about spoilers from here on in. Don't spoil me. It pisses me off so much. I was like, wow, they really nearly spoiled me on this. Cannot believe it. So if you can, please help me self-moderate. I don't want any spoilers. I don't know how else to say it. It's so frustrating. Because with a story like this, the mystery, it's one of those things that I am a patient person, and I love mysteries because they slowly unfold and you get little breadcrumbs and you have to be patient. With a story like this, I know it's like 5 volumes, so there's gonna be a lot of surprises. And so I know people get really eager. They're like, well, just so you know, and I'm like, don't tell me. I'm like, that ruins the surprise. You know, I'm halfway smart. I can figure it out. But oh my gosh, so I am actually happy that they did this nice recap, though. I am glad that they did that. The whole thing with Kamo and the Sinner's Pit and everything, and hanging the Imperial Preceptor over it. I'm actually glad they did this recap because it'd been a solid week since I had watched the last episode. So I needed I was struggling with his name. I was like, Kamo. I was like, it's on the tip of my tongue. So we have, again, questions still left to go, right? And so I also want to so we have those that we're going to talk about. And then we have Kamo over here. And Kamo's whole thing is that he blames, which we know her name is Banyu now, so we can call her Banyu. He blames Banyu for the soldiers in the pit and for the snakes. And he takes it out on her. Man, he takes it out on her. I was like, holy cow, he beat her. I didn't think we were going to get this girl like slung around and like thrashed like she was. I was like, holy cow. So we're going to get Banyu over here. We're going to put her right here. We've got our players in all of this. Banyu, we got our Imperial Preceptor. We're going to put Yao over here. Yao, I was not expecting to see him in this episode. I figured it'd be Feng. So non-Feng. So that's curious that Yao is the one that shows up. There's some suspicious things with Yao, though, and we're going to talk about that. Some things that I'm like, really? Okay. And then, of course, because we have to put him in red, we have old Hua Cheng / Sun Long. We're going to put him right here. And then finally, our beautiful, adorable cinnamon bun. We're going to put Lian right here, because he is adorable. All right, so we're gonna put all that on there. My big question this episode is still, where's Zhao? I think he's the one calling the snakes. I think Zhao is the one summoning the snakes behind the scenes. I think that it is him. So we have, where is Zhao? Okay, where is Zhao? I think he's the one that is summoning the snakes, and he's the one that's been working behind the scenes, being super sketch, because if she says she can't control, she makes the comment several times in this episode that she can summon but not control the snakes. She says sometimes she can, but sometimes she can't. And I was like, okay. So, but that seems like it under special circumstances. So when they were off in the cave and the snakes attacked them, like, seemingly, so that's curious that the snakes attacked them. So I'm like, did Zhao maybe control them in that moment? Is he working with the 2 ladies? Is he in cahoots with them? I'm gonna make a little thing here. So is he in cahoots with the other two women? We don't know who they are. They're not heaven officials. They are not heaven officials. She makes the comment, there's never been any down there, which is curious. So are they ghosts? I'm guessing they're ghosts. So, very curious. But yeah, his whole thing is that he wants to hang her over the sinner's pit. Even if I die, I'll make sure the traitor dies too. I will hang her every time I catch her. So it makes it seem like it's been in a loop that he keeps on hanging her up, but she doesn't die because she's a ghost. So what the heck? He's just like on a time loop with it. It's kind of weird. And he says he's going to keep on hanging her. I'm like, that's so odd because it seems like she's been there before. And Lian's like, all these years she was hung over the sinner's pit every time she got caught by you. And he says, I was being merciful by hanging her. So yeah, I'm like, that's so curious because he clearly like wallops her in this episode, but he says that he's going to keep hanging her. That this keeps on happening every time he catches her. So I guess so she can't use her magic, but she gets out of it pretty easily. So I'm like, what is the deal? It just keeps going round and round in circles. After becoming a ghost, the devil hunted down my men and turned into wraths. What did he say there? I'm sure there might be a translation issue too. So he says, I'm being merciful by hanging her. After becoming a ghost, the devil hunted down my men who had turned into wraths. Okay, so they all turned into wraths. That's interesting. And threw them into the sinner's pit and set up a magical formation around the pit. So we cut back to Lian like running his hand along it, being like, this feels weird. Noticing that there's some kind of formation around it. Okay, Lian, and several people have noted this, Lian is trusting once loyal. Like once he puts his trust in you, he does not waver on it. Like he put his trust in Banyu, his trust is with San Long. Like once he puts his trust in you, he is ride or die. He is ready to support you. I love it. But he actually is very street smart and doesn't play his hand. That's something I really like about Lian is that he's not boasting. Like the one thing about Wushin in Modao Zushi, and most of the time it was to the juniors who he's trying to teach a lesson to, is that Wushin would be like, well, here's how I solved the case, kids. And it made sense in Modao Zushi because it was to teach them a lesson and to help them become better cultivators. So it made sense why he did it. But he'd always like tell you what hand he was dealing. Lian is surprisingly secretive. And he's doing stuff behind the scenes, like the thing with the rock formation, but he doesn't let on, right? He doesn't immediately tell you or tell Feng Yao or San Long. He keeps it to himself until he needs to talk about it or until we, the audience, see it. So I'm curious in the novel to get more into the inner monologues he has during these scenes, because I'm assuming this flashback where he touched the side of the wall is an internal monologue that he's having in the novel. We just see it in the Donghua through this perspective of it being animated. And then we see him try to get out. So it was Banyu that created the barrier, supposedly. So supposedly it was not San Long, it was her that created the barrier in the pit, which would keep the corpses in. Which is curious, right? So he says, I heard my fellow brothers crying every day, so I had to catch merchants who wandered into the ruined city to feed them. I had no other choice. Interesting. And so that's the thing too, is that if she were controlling the snakes, why wouldn't she just kill the merchants before they got to the city? Why would she let Kamo have them if she's his enemy? Why would she let him feed them to his soldiers? It sounds to me like she put them all in the pit to keep them from attacking the merchants who came to get the fern, but to keep Kamo happy, she would bring some of the villagers in and he would feed them to the soldiers to keep him safe, to keep him satisfied. But that's curious. There's, again, so many questions. So I guess another question is, why does Banyu seem to help Kamo? Does she feel guilty that she caused his death? I think that's part of it. I think she feels guilty that she caused his death and the death of these soldiers, but something's still off, right? And then Lian asks about the half-buried face in the palace, and he's like, did you do that? And he's like, we have to fertilize the Shan Yu fern. Otherwise, we won't be able to deal with the scorpion-tailed snakes. So it's just to have the antidote. And so Lian's like, okay, even though Kamo is no longer human, he's still filled with fear towards these snakes. Like, that was clearly, why didn't the Imperial Preceptor use the snakes to fight back before she died? So yeah, that's a good question. So she lost control of the snakes, right? So again, yeah, that's a really good question. Why? So if the soldiers feared the snakes, why didn't Ban Yu use the snakes in battle? Like, what was the deal there? Like, her character's so mysterious still, right? So yeah, why didn't she use it? Why does she seem to be helping Kamo when he doesn't think she is and holds a grudge? Also, it's strange of her to let snakes sting people. She seems to be luring them into the city for Kamo to feed them to his soldiers. However, wouldn't that be helping the enemy? Yeah, exactly. There's so many questions. And there's another issue that's puzzling me. I love Lian's working through all of this. And he's like, General Kamo, on our way here. Yeah, we try to get answers about the ladies in black and white, and Hua Cheng, like San Long, silences him when he senses that she's coming down into the pit. So yeah, God, it's great. I love it. And so then we get the intro. We're going to get past the intro here, though. I'm going to skip it since we've already watched it for the episode. Yup. So then I love that her flame is purple. I love she has this purple flame as she like levitates down into the pit. It's really cool. And I like that Lian's like, oh, she can levitate. And Hua Cheng's just sitting there like, like he's just, San Long at this point is just like, he's not amused. He's just amused. He's not surprised by anything. He's just amused. He's like, yeah, whatevs. You know, what can we do? And so this part's interesting though. And I like that he stands in front of Lian. Like, he stands in front of him like, don't worry, bae, I got you. You're not going to get hurt. So he stands in front of Lian to protect him. It's like, oh, you devastation ranked ghost standing in front of your loved one to keep him safe. But here's the thing. She looks around and is like, oh crap, all these bodies. This is not good. And interesting. And he's mad at her, right? And she says, what happened, Kamo? And he's like, what happened? He's like, you pushed them off. And he's like, you evil priest. You're the reason they ended up here. But she didn't want them to be killed in the pit. That's the thing. And then Lian's like, the evil priest, she's the Half Moon's Imperial Preceptor? And she says, hold on. And I like that San Long stands in front of Lian to kind of like block him off. Of course he does. Yeah, he's guarding it. So he's guarding Lian's face so that she can't see, because the animation makes it seem a lot lighter than it actually is down there, because we, the audience, wouldn't be able to, if it was pitch black, we wouldn't be able to see anything, and that wouldn't be a good episode. So they make it pretty light in comparison. But I like that Hua Cheng stands in front of Lian so that she can't recognize him. So Hua Cheng, we're going to ask, does Hua Cheng know Ban Yu? I'm assuming that's going to get answered, right? At some point. At some point it will be. But yeah. Okay. And I like that as he looks at his back, I like that in the dark he's looking at the back of his neck, and Lian has the flashback to Hua Cheng saving him. And he's like, interesting. That guy saved me in the past from falling, and now San Long is standing in front of me. So, And I love Lian's like, well, you know, I'm trying to figure all this out. And so her walking by, and she just turns to see all the bodies. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot more than I thought. And she seems really sad about it. And she says, all right, like, they're free. And he's like, what do you mean? You must be satisfied now. So he's like, they're all dead. And she's like, Kamo, what I meant was, that's it. We're finally free. Ah, so was she gathering them all down there and was eventually going to just set them all free? Like, how does that work? Okay. And she says, was it you who annihilated these ghost soldiers? And I like that Shilian says it was an accident. Oh, you precious cinnamon bun. Yeah, it was an accident. I like Shilian's like, we didn't mean it. And Hua Cheng's sitting there like, yeah, no, it was no accident. I killed all of them. Yeah. Oh my god. And now Livy says bullshit, because it really is. Hua Cheng knew exactly what he was doing. She's like, who are you? And he's like, I'm a heavenly official. And this is a friend of mine. God. I love it. And she's like, And Hua Cheng is just being silent as the grave, not giving her any ammunition. She says, no heavenly officials have ever been here. I thought all of you didn't care about this place. So we established that there's not been any heavenly officials come to Half Moon Pass because, like Lian finds out in the heavenly realm, they don't want to go down there for reasons that we aren't sure about as the audience yet. And so it's interesting because that means, who are these two ladies? We're assuming they're ghosts now, but we don't know exactly what kind of ghosts. Are they a calamity? We don't know. So I guess we'll find out. And Lian's like, well, I tried to get them to come help, but they wouldn't. And she says, do you all want to get out? And he's like, oh, yes, but the magical formation is trapping us. And so she opens it up. Like, she instantly lets them get out of there. So, interestingly enough, she's willing to let them go. And she's like, I removed it. You can go. And she's like, okay. So who were the women in black and white that we saw? He's like, I still have questions. And then we hear Yao up there, right? Yao pops in and he's like, I'm gonna leave. And he's like, oh, I'm down here. And he's like, who else is there? And he's like, he's like, you better come down here. He's like, it's kind of hard for me to explain, yelling. He's indeed in the pit. So then Yao goes down there. So my question is, where has Yao been? Like, so what is the deal? So Yao is suspicious. He's like, where was he? Because when he asks about the villagers, he doesn't say, oh, they went off on their own accord. Oh, I couldn't stop them. They wanted to go look for you. He doesn't say anything about that. He doesn't mention that at all. So I'm like, how? But he goes down there. He drops the flame down there. And then, oh my God, I love just the look of Hua Cheng as the flames like billow down and you see her, the ghost girl, and the general's like, oh, I don't like the light. And then he's like, they were all killed. And Lian's like, oh shoot, are all of these piled bodies the soldiers? Yeah, there's a lot. There's like thousands of them that in like the span of 30 seconds he killed. Okay. And he's just sitting there not, it's a weird combination, right? Because on the one hand, he looks not impressed or amused, but San Long also looks like he's a little bit like, not disappointed, but kind of not embarrassed, but like he didn't want Lian to see the extent of the damage that he did. And Lian's like, oh crap, there's like thousands of bodies down here. So he basically killed thousands in 30 seconds of these legendary warriors. Okay. No big deal. No problem at all. And Lian's like, oh. He's like, San Long. Oh, that look, and that look that he gives where he just like, he looks so ethereal there, like San Long, like looking in the flames. He looks powerful in that shot when you see all the bodies. Hua Cheng, he looks like the cat that just brought the dead mouse to your feet and was like, are you not entertained? Like he looks intimidating right there where he's like, he looks over at Lian like, what are you gonna say? And then he smiles like, oh, hey boo. And so then you have like the red robes, the black boots. It's like Lian's like slowly piecing it together. The gears are turning. He's like, He's like, oh, hey, okay. And that's when Yao comes down. So here's the thing. He's like, aren't you taking care of the merchants? And he's like, you've been away for 6 hours. So they've been down there for 6 hours. So I drew a protection circle around them and I came here. Okay, so again, my question is, why did Yao let them go in the first place? Why were they allowed to come to the village, to the palace in the first place to look for him? I guess he just got impatient and he was like, fine, we'll go. But he says he drew a protection circle around them, so okay. So as we know now, there's a protection circle around the merchants. And it's been 6 hours have passed since they left. Okay. I'm assuming we may find out more in the next episode, but that's curious. I'm still curious about Yao. And then, of course, Lian, all Lian can think of is he's like, they must feel abandoned. he's still concerned for the less privileged. I don't want to say weak because I don't think that Banyu is weak, but she, in the situation where Kamo is like beating the snot out of her, she's definitely the less advantaged in that situation. So despite everything that happens to him, he always feels bad for like the underdog, the person that is the lesser advantaged. He's always sticking out for them. And Yao's like, it's their choice if they try anything stupid. And so he looks around and sees the general, and he's like, and he sees her, and he's like, who are they? And so he's like, oh, this is the Half Moon's preceptor and General Kamo. And he's like, really? He's like, now they're, and so, but then Kamo is like, he just goes after Banyu and she just lets him punch her. She just lets him just completely, it was hard to watch. Like, he just went to town. Like, I'm used to Modao Zushi. I'm used to like elegant sword fights and like cultivation and like, you know, you got your little arrays and everything. In this, no, this zombie general just punches the snot out of her. It's like, oh my God. Heaven Official's blessing is not messing around. They are not afraid to get violent. And she's like a ghost, but she's bleeding. And she says that she's sorry. But I'm like, there has to be more to the story that she's not saying. And he says, if it weren't for you who colluded with the weasel and opened the gate. So colluded with the weasel. Is Zhao the weasel? That's... Where is he? He's gone. He's not... He's down in that pit, damn it. Where is he? So, we don't know who is the weasel. Who is the weasel that he is talking about? We don't know. I'm assuming that's going to come out. And that opened the gate. All right. And they're all just kind of like, oh my God, it wouldn't have ended up like this if you hadn't have done that. It's like, oh my God. And just And so he's like going to strangle her. And he says, I'll hang you every time I catch you. And she's just sitting there. And I love that Lian like zooms over there. And he's like, wait a minute. And he's like, please calm down. Talk it out with words. Lian's like, can't we find a non-violent solution to this problem? So yeah. So he is asking for the non-violent solution, and he knows Banyu. Okay. And he knows Banyu. Gotcha. And I love that when she puts her hand over his. And I love that her skin is like, you can tell she's a ghost because her skin has this ashen gray color to it. It's not like flesh colored. It's got a gray tone. It's not as dark as Kamo's, but it's got this like unearthly gray tone. And her touching his hand, he knows who she is. He sees her finally. And he's like, oh, it's you. And she says, General Hua, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that. Yep. I want to go through this. And so then Yao knocks him out. Yao knocks out the general because he can. Awesome. And has the little light in his hand. He's like, oh, do you know each other? And then he says, Banyu. It's the Half Moon Pass. And she says, you remember me, General Hua? And he's like, of course I do. Oh, it's so, he's like, how'd you end up like this? How'd you end up a ghost, little girl? It's so sad, right? Oh my gosh. And so she's like, I'm terribly sorry, Lieutenant. I messed up. So something happened and she messed up. So in her mind, oh no. So she somehow messed up and became a ghost. We don't know exactly how yet. That's not been revealed to us. But so then Hua Cheng came a little bit closer to here, and he's like, General. It's like, Lieutenant. Like, what's going on here? And it's like, oh, he's like, are you the general mentioned on the tombstone? And he's like, yep, that's my tombstone. So it's good to know that, yeah, so Lian has been alive all this time. And so he is, we're going to put General Hua Shi. Okay. And he supposedly, quote unquote, died and was left the tombstone. So he basically had to fake his death. Okay. Because I get it, he's ascended, he's a god, so you can't just kill him through normal means. That apparently does not work. But yeah. And so I say that because somebody in the comments was like, you should really pay attention to the general story and how it's connected to Lian. And I was like, okay. And at the time I'm thinking, well, it thematically lines up because the general in the story and Lian both have the same kind of personality. Well, now it makes sense because they're the same person. So again, don't spoil me. Like, that was such a spoiler. And I was like, I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt. But I was going to figure it out watching this episode. So he's like, what on earth happened? And he's like, oh, well. And again, he says it's a long story. And he's like, 200 years ago, I had to avoid being noticed for some reason. For some reason, I had to be avoided. So here's the thing. Lian's memory is spotty. Lian, this is a very important note with him and his memory. His memory is limited. So I'm assuming since he is not ascended anymore, or he just became recently ascended again, that when he's not ascended, his memory is limited. Kind of like he's not mortal anymore, but he's not ascended to the heavenly realm. So I'm assuming like when you're in the heavenly realm and you have your temples and stuff, you have more power, you have more access. Maybe you have a bigger RAM drive on the computer. And now that he's like, shrunk down and more compact and not in the heavenly realm anymore, his memory is limited. So he has chosen what memories to leave out. And apparently he had to avoid being noticed for a reason he doesn't remember. So he was being avoided and ended up in Banyu. He ended up at the Half Moon Pass as he was scrap collecting with his little hat. I love he's got his little bag, his little hat. So guided by my compass broke. Of course it broke. And I ended up in the desert. I'm like, oh, poor dude. And there was an army drafting men for military duties. And that's where he's like, you were drafted into the army? I love that. Yeah, I was so incredulous. He's like, really? You of all people? And she's like, later, I participated in several missions to expel the bandits and got promoted somehow to lieutenant. So he's blocked out certain memories. I wonder if he has blocked out memories of killing people. If maybe that's something he's blocked out. Because as we've established in this series, he started out as a martial god. That was his first ascension for destroying a monster. So I wonder what other things he did, to get this high praise, right? And in doing so, he has wanted to block those memories out because he doesn't want to remember, like, he's pretty non-violent in this third iteration, in this third ascension. So he doesn't seem like he wants to remember any of those violent moments, so he's kind of blocked them out. But we've seen that Lian is strong on his own anyway, so I love he just gives her like a little head pat. Like, it's so sweet. I love that he looks down at her and he's like, some soldiers called me general out of respect. Oh, it's so sweet. Like the way he like looks at her and he's like, why do they call you General Hua when your surname is not Hua? And he said, I used an alias back then. I called myself Hua Shi. And I love that San Long's like, The question is, did Hua Cheng know this? Did San Long know that Lian had this alias of Hua Shi? And is that one of the reasons that he chose the name Hua Cheng? Is that a chosen ghost name that he did it after him? And he's like, or was it that Lian, who has a very spotty memory, named himself the alias because of Hua Cheng? Which came first, chicken or the egg? We're going to find out eventually. I know we are. But it's so cute because in that moment I'm like, oh, you two have known each other far. Lian, his spotty memory makes a lot of sense now why he is the way he is around San Long. San Long and Hua Cheng being the same person, they've known Lian for a while, but Lian doesn't quite remember them. So that makes a lot more sense. So this is getting fascinating. And he's like, the outbreak was at the borders and left many kids orphaned, and Banyu was one of them. So this kind of lines out with the story interestingly, okay? Because for the record, I don't like Lian in the Banyu in the Half Moon Pass uniform. Doesn't suit him. Blue's not his color. Blue is not Lian's color. Red looked great on him, but blue, nah. So, trying to tie out her story, she, at some point, went to the palace. She went to the palace after Lian died. I'm going to say after Lian died, perhaps. That she was at the palace and then she went out into the desert, maybe. Or she went to the palace originally after Lian had died in quotations, after his fake death, and then later went to Yong'an to see. I'll leave that blank for a moment. It's either one of two things. I think it might be one other thing, but we'll see. Okay. But anyway, he's making like the little stew in his helmet. Everybody's mean to Lian. Why are they all mean to him? Those soldiers, he was just making soup. He was just making soup, pea soup in his helmet, being a good boy, not hurting a fly. And these guys are so mean. They kicked his helmet and they laughed at him. And he's like, don't take it out. He says, don't take it out on the food. Like, even then, Lian does not think of himself. He has so little self-worth in himself. He's like, well, at least don't take it out in the soup. It's like, oh my God, Lian. And they're like, do you really think anybody would eat that shit? And then they see the girl like in the desert eating it. And he's like, oh no, don't eat that. That's not good. There's sand and stuff in it. And then he sees her and she has the purple hair. It's so sad. And Lian just feels so sorry for her. And he offers her like a cookie instead and she like eats it up. She's so cute. But apparently he's going into town and she follows him around. He's like eating the cookies and the town people know her. And she like just stalks him and stays close to him, which is really cute. And then I like that she just kind of is his shadow, right? Just trying to be near him because he was kind to her. Aww. It's really cute. I like that he's like, so I got to know her a bit after a while. And I love that he like gives her his little cloak. It's so cute. I didn't know where she was from. She could speak Mandarin, but she barely spoke. And this whole dinner scene reminds me of Modao Zushi, where it's like Ayan and Wuxin eating together. It's so sweet. And you almost wish like there was Wanji there with them. And just like this, it said she only had one friend. A Yong'an boy. Sometimes I taught her singing and wrestling and we got along pretty well. So then we see this person coming out of the shadows that we don't see their face. And I'm trying to see if I see anything. And it just, you don't see anything. But I'm like, okay, it's either one of two things. Her only friend is either Zhao or it's Hua Cheng. I think it's Hua Cheng. I'm convinced because Hua Cheng we've established can change shapes. He can shapeshift. So who is to say that he's not this boy that became friends with her and went and hung out with Lian but didn't reveal who he was, kind of like what he's doing now under the guise of being Sanlong. How do we know it's not him? And it would make sense if it was Hua Cheng. It would make sense if we think Zhao is a ghost, it makes sense too. But it would make sense if after she left the palace, she went to go find someone from Yongin to teach her sorcery, and it was Hua Cheng, and if he was already a devastation rank ghost and was teaching her sorcery, would make sense. And so then she came back and all the stuff and all hell broke loose, right? But I don't know. We don't get to see his face. And we see someone there with like helping her playing the tambourine while she dances, and we assume it's him, but I don't know. It's either Zhao or it's Hua Cheng, I think, but I'm not sure yet because the kid could shapeshift. And later I was involved in a riot when she wasn't there, obviously. And I was injured in the stampede and I couldn't get up, so I had to play dead. And so you all know what happened next. When I woke up, I was back in Yongin Kingdom, and that's how I lost contact with Ban Yu. So he ended up back in Yongin, back there when he was healed. Again, I'm gonna bet that it's Hua Cheng, because Hua Cheng probably found his body, took it back to Yongin where he was from, and just didn't tell Ban Yu about it, and just let her go back to the Half Moon Pass. That's my theory. That's my theory that this is Hua Cheng has been trying to get Lian this whole time, but why he didn't reveal himself like he is now to him then, if that's the case, again. So what is Hua Cheng's deal with Lian? If that was 200 years ago, so if that was Hua Cheng, then he's been following Lian for like 200 years. Why didn't he like tell him back then? What was the deal? Was it because Lian was not ascended? He was clearly not mortal. He was more than that because he descended once. So again, this show, more questions, and I know they're going to get answered eventually. It's just the mystery is funny building up. I thought when they mentioned Ban Yu, they meant the kingdom's name, not your name. I didn't expect that it was you. And she says, I'm sorry. She says, you were dragged into that stampede to save me. Oh. And he's like, he says, it wasn't that bad getting stampeded to death. It's fine. And he's like, it actually wasn't that bad. God, Yao's eye rolling. He's like his eyes nearly roll back into his head. He rolls his eyes so hard. God, it's so funny. He's like, how'd you get dragged into stampede? You are well able to protect yourself. And he's like, well, I vaguely recall the two sides started to fight regardless of my mediation. And he's like, I saw she was stuck in the crowd. I tried to save her, but it was too late to get myself out. So it was like a Mufasa deal from the Lion King. And he's like, vaguely. He's like, how would you not remember these things? And he says, since my memory capacity is limited, I'd rather remember the delicious steam buns I had yesterday than being dragged into that stampede several hundred years ago. And I like that Hua Cheng is like, So he just has short-term memory. Like he would rather remember the good things in his life than the bad things. And Yao's like, that's really not helpful for us, but good for you. I love it. I'm going to take a photo of Yao. Yao's face is just priceless. And Hua Cheng's like, that's my guy. And then her saying, I'm sorry. He's like, I saved you by choice, but you might need to apologize to someone else, right? Aww. And so he wants her to apologize to Kamo because he's like, hey, you probably owe other people an apology. And Yao's like, let's get back to the main issue of what's going on. Why did you open the gate and cause the massacre? And it makes sense that in her nature, she's really timid and she does not trust Yao. She does not trust Yao. And she's like, why should I talk to him? He's not General Hua. And Yao just wants answers. But we've established with Yao's character that he's pretty impatient and he's very straight to the point. He's like, I have a job, let's get it done, let's go, so we can go back home. He's not as empathetic of her or any ghost for that matter, whereas Lian is quite empathetic, especially if he knew them, right? Once you got that trust, then Lian is not gonna let up. He's like, do you have any accomplices? What else did you plot together? And she's like, I don't want to talk to you. And he's like, well, ugh. And Lian's like, hey. He says, is she dumb? And Lian's like, you're not a mediator. Let me do this. And Lian, again, like, part of my degree is in conflict resolution. And it's like, Lian, he's like, yeah, you're being too stern. You're not asking the right questions. And he gently goes to her. He's like, from what I know, it sounds like you'd never seek revenge or betray others. I'm like, he's just doing like the psychiatrist mediation role. He's like, from what it sounds like, this is right? You wouldn't betray others. He's like, so what on earth made you open the gate? Are you willing to tell me? And Yao is not patient. He's like, if you don't want to talk about it, can you at least tell me, why did you send the snakes to sting people? And he's like, she's a wrath. Isn't that self-explanatory? So that's so interesting that Yao, he's like, well, she's a wrath, so automatically she is evil. He's like, she's a ghost, so she's bad news. All ghosts are bad news. And Lian's like, well, maybe not necessarily. Let's be nice. Give her the benefit of the doubt. And she says, I didn't send the snakes. They disobeyed my order and got out. And he's like, really? She's like, I didn't lie. And then, of course, Yao's like, well, isn't that what offenders say? And I'm like, man, Yao, you're not helping. He's like, weren't those passerbys stung by your snakes? Stop the nonsense and hold out your hands. And she does what he asks. It's so sad. He gets her all tied up, and he ties up the general. And I'm like, ugh. He's like, okay. He's like, our mission's accomplished. Let's go. And then Lian's like, now hold on. He's like, now wait a minute. He's like, do you want to talk to that nonsense? And Hua Cheng says she has no reason to lie. And Yao just stares at him and glares at him like, I love Hua Cheng. Is just like, he just stands out to the side and he's like, what you gonna do? What you gonna do, Yao? What you gonna do? Go ahead. Try to put your handcuffs on me. I'm like, oh. And Lian's like, so you can't summon snakes now. And she's like, I can summon them, but they don't listen to me sometimes. And so, of course, Lian's like, well, then summon the snakes. I just love that she's like, did you not hear me? And he's like, no, summon them. We'll see what happens. And she's like, okay. So she summons them, and they come. Like, what'd you expect? They're there. And she's like, oh. And you can tell that she can't control it. And it just instantly blows up. Now, we can assume that Hua Cheng blew up that snake, right? That he blew it up. And Lian's like, oh, huh, really? And Yao's like, she's lying. Did you think the snake would get him? And she's like, I did not. It just didn't listen to me. And so who can tell if it obeyed or disobeyed you? So yeah, so Yao, he has no trust in her at all. He thinks she's a ghost, so she's automatically evil. So he's like, well, how do we know you didn't tell it to attack him? We don't believe you. Like, he just is not trusting at all. And she's like, it wasn't even summoned by me. So somebody else is summoning the snakes. I'm like, where's Zhao? Is he summoning the snakes? I'm going to say he is. I'm going to say he's the one doing it. And he's like, why are you lying? She's like, it's not me. Then he's like, then who else can it be? And he tells her to make them go away. And she tries to do something, but does not work. And so we have all these snakes here, right? And she's trying to make them go away. And Lian is suddenly like, wait a minute. Are you going to take her side? These snakes. And then, yeah, Hua Cheng, like, he made them all bow to him. And it seemed like they were going away. And then Yao just could not take it. He just burned them all, right? Could not take it. And he's like, come to your senses. And that's when Lian's like, let's get out of here and discuss it. But the barrier's back up. The formation's been removed. And then that's when the snake shows up. I thought the snake was going to sting Yao. I thought it was going to sting him for a hot second. I really did. And he threw it at the girl, and she gets it around her wrists. And we don't see the snake on around her wrist die, but then we see all these snakes, like all of them. There's like thousands of snakes. The fudge? Nope. And that's where the damn episode ends. How dare you? How dare you, show? So, who sent the snakes? So who else is the snake charmer? Now, the snakes listen to Hua Cheng because he is the king of ghosts. But I don't think Hua Cheng summoned the snakes because he wouldn't want his precious Lian to be in danger. And I don't think it was her. I really don't. I think it's like the extra flute in the Untamed. There's somebody else charming snakes. I think it's Zhao because we haven't seen him down in the pit. I think he's been hiding and he's a ghost too. And he has been trying to lure the snakes in. He's been the one trying to kill the people with the snakes. It's not been her. I think he's the one responsible working with these other two ladies to open the gates, and that they've scapegoated Ban Yu into all of this, but I don't think she's really the one that's at fault. But she's too shy and doesn't want to talk to Yao about it, and if Lian had had a little more time, I think she would have talked to him, but that didn't happen. So, yeah. Oh my gosh! We have one more episode and an OVA of this season. Are you joking? But the good news is that I still have the book to read, and then we'll go from there. So I don't know. I'm very torn about what to do. I want to read the first volume and look at the manhwa at the same time. So kind of like what I did with Modao Zushi for volume 1. I want to do that. So I'm pretty excited about it. But then as far as volume 2 goes, I have volume 2 back there on the shelf. I know season 2 is supposed to come out at some point. So I don't know if I want to go ahead and read volume 2 and start reading the novel. And then as the donghua comes out, we'll react to it. It will be if I do it that way, it would be very different than what I've done with Modao Zushi. It'd be the opposite. Because with Modao Zushi, I was lucky and I could watch all of the donghua first and then read the novel afterwards. But in this case, I may have to do it in reverse. I may have to read the novel first and then watch the donghua. So we'll see. I'll probably poll Patreon and see what they want to do, since y'all are being kind and supporting me to do this. So I'll probably do that, is poll Patreon and see what they want me to do. If they want me to either read through the novel and just go through it full swing and then watch season 2, or if they want me to read volume 1 and then, maybe watch Scumbag System while we wait on season 2, or if they want me to just read. I don't know if I want to do that though, because that would get confusing. I almost feel like I need to do one story at a time of MXTX because there's so much. So we'll see. We'll see how long it takes me to get through the novel chapters and the manhwa and go from there. We'll try that. We'll see how long that takes and just do it that way. So, and maybe by then we'll know more about season 2. I cannot wait. I can't believe we have one episode left and an OVA. And I don't feel like we're going to get it all resolved in the next episode unless it's a longer episode, which maybe it is. Maybe the episode's longer next time. I hope so. I feel like in 20 minutes we're not going to resolve this. But I could be wrong. There's a lot that happened in this episode, so there is no telling what may end up happening. So we shall see, right? But I hope y'all enjoyed this discussion and reaction, but I'm so excited to find out what's going to happen in the next episode. I don't think I can wait a week. I think I'm going to have to watch it before then. But overall, everybody, I know I razzed a lot about spoilers in this episode, and so I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make anybody mad, but I'm so against spoilers when especially there's a mystery story like this. So I know like 98% of everybody is doing amazing at not spoiling me, and I know y'all are going crazy with me not knowing these things. So thank you, but please help me look out for spoilers because I want to avoid them. I want to be surprised. I want you all to see me be surprised. And so it's not fun if you get it spoiled and then you're like, I already know what's going to happen, right? So in any case, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I will be back very soon with episode 12 of Heaven Official's Blessing. Bye.